Hi friends, Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume. The following conversation with Donna Lieberman was recorded before Q Time began and before recent events unfolded.
Please stay tuned for the postscript where we catch up with Donna to reflect on current events.
And as always,
the Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, your nonstop rallying cry for creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camian.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're joining us for the first time, you are so welcome. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we have got such good answers.
A Spark File is the place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations. And if you're like us and making stuff all the time, you know that sometimes the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry. We're here to refill it.
Yes, we're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a concert that celebrates our freedoms and shines a light on why they need defending.
Or a lawsuit that strikes down the Defense Against Marriage Act in the Edie Windsor case.
Or a project to strengthen and protect your reproductive rights.
Or a strategy that combines litigation, public education, advocacy, and lobbying to promote and protect civil rights and civil liberties.
On today's Makersode, we're going to talk with someone who truly sparks us.
And that special someone is the first call I'm going to make if I ever get arrested, Donna Lieberman. Donna, welcome to the Spark File.
Oh, you guys. I'm so happy to be sparky with you.
We are overjoyed to be in your presence today.
Very, very excited.
Me too.
Thanks
Me
for
too.
being here. So first of all, price of admission. Real quick, you have to tell us a risk that you have taken recently. It could be something that scared you a little, made you nervous, not perfect, but progress.
I have choices here.
Oh, okay. Go give it to us.
Lay them out.
Yeah.
So one risk that we took in our annual Broadway Stands Up for Freedom concert this year was because our theme was My Body, My Business, prompted by the abortion ban crusade that's going on in the country, and all the transphobia that we're dealing with, was we had an all-woman cast for the first time.
That's right.
At Broadway Stands Up for Freedom. I got to say, we kind of backed into it And then I realized, oh, we have an all-women cast. This is cool. Is it okay?
Were you like, ooh, this feels a little risky?
Oh, totally. I was I mean, because we backed into it, I worried that we hadn't sort of prepped anybody for that. I worried that there were guys who could have performed who, like, we didn't say yes to. And I realized, oh man, particularly like a lot of our gay pals are like, staunch supporters of the concert and weren't part of it this year. But it was very cool to have an all-woman cast for this particular theme.
Was there a point at which you owned it? Like, that's our all-female cast and we're proud of it. And even though we backed into it, now it's like one of those decisions that thankfully happened for us in a way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, after there was a little hesitation and then like, this is like,
my body, my business. This makes so much sense.
I love it.
That's great.
I think you've officially been admitted into the
say
Spark
so.
File.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, counselor, literally, I had the pleasure of working with Donna for years on the annual Broadway Stands Up for Freedom concert. But for people that don't know you, this is a 3-parter. Here's the first one. Donna Lieberman, what is your job title?
I am the director of the New York Civil Liberties Union, which is the ACLU of New York.
And for people who don't know, what is the ACLU of New York, a.k.a. the NYCLU? What is that?
Well, we are a membership organization that is affiliated with the ACLU, and our mission in life is to protect the fundamental freedoms that are guaranteed by the Bill of Rights and the equality amendments to the Constitution, the way we interpret them. We use lawsuits, and historically that's what we've been known for. But we also use public education, advocacy, and lobbying and organizing to get the job done. So it's a mixed media operation to promote social justice.
So you are either the first line of defense or the last line of defense. I'm not sure how the analogy goes, but you are the defense between us and our inalienable rights being taken away.
Absolutely. So
thank you, first of all, for the work that you do.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you for saying that.
Huge. Yeah. Thank you.
And you work seemingly tirelessly, but I can't imagine, you are a human being. So I don't know how you do all that. But let me ask you this. As executive director of the ACLU of New York, what is your job like? What do you specifically do?
I've been the director here for about 20 years, and I was on staff before that.
I feel like your 20th anniversary is coming right up for being the executive director.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Next year. Are we having a big party? What are we doing?
I don't know. You might be having a party,
I feel like we should vet you. I feel like we should...
All right, let's do it. Yeah. Well, anyway, so what's the question?
What do you do? What's your day like? What do you do?
So I guess one could say that my day is a little bit like Sesame Street. I get like 3-minute chunks of time to focus on any particular issue I'm dealing with.
This is a very specific episode of Sesame Street, though.
Yes, real specific.
Well, like the kids show, we try to defend values, but anything from, running the office to figuring out what our position is going to be on bail, on speedy trial, how we're going to beat back the efforts to roll back the reforms that we just won like 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
There is an unending series of challenges, and anytime we win an issue, like, we have to get right back up and defend the victory. It happens almost every time. Bail is a classic example, but we passed the Reproductive Health Act.
Yes.
At the beginning, just about a year ago, right? And literally, as soon as it was passed, right, we started getting pushback. and the people who did the right thing in the legislature are worried that, people are calling them and saying, oh, you're killing babies now because you codified Roe v. Wade. And so you can't just let a victory hang out there.
Yeah,
there's so much work to do to not only prevent politicians who are not known for their courage, whatever, preventing them from reversing course, but also translating the victory into a reality on the ground. And that's a huge challenge because, when you win, the right to choose, it's meaningless. It's empty if there aren't providers out there to make services available to women.
Right.
And so you wouldn't believe how many potholes there are along the way to making any given right a reality.
How do you keep that fire in your belly, if you will? How do you keep that alive, knowing that it sounds like an exhaustive win and then defend and then win and defend cycle?
Well, there's a couple of types of answers to that. First of all, I have to say, for me personally, if I weren't doing this work, I'd be nuts. Because
you can pour yourself
because I would feel so at sea in a world that was just so problematic. But I think for many years we as an organization were very effective as a voice for civil liberties and human rights, but not so effective at getting stuff done. And of late, for a number of reasons, we've become incredibly effective in getting shit done. We put out a legislative agenda a year ago for the first 100 days of the new legislature. We didn't do that every year, and there wasn't a reason to because the legislature was a piece of crap. It had nothing, that was so dysfunctional. The Senate was hijacked by the Republicans. But when the Democrats took over, we put out an agenda. We had about 18 things, and we kept thinking, should we put this on? We're not going to get that, maybe, Anyway, we put out 18 things, and 3/4 of them got done, in the legislative session. In previous years, we would take victory lap, really big victory lap if we won one big issue, or one small issue. But really, what the legislature did, and it's not just because of us, we played a significant role in providing support on key issues, but also providing our legal expertise and know-how to help get things over the line.
Can you tell us a little bit about your origin story? Like, how did you end up doing this work?
The Donna Lieberman creation story.
Yes, please.
Right.
Sit back and relax.
So, when I was in college, the first thing I did at registration as a freshman was sign up at the SDS table. SDS was not weather SDS. It was like, power to the people SDS, or, it was a much more democracy oriented and anti-war and civil rights group. And I kind of majored in that, in activism in college. And honestly, the way I felt about the ACLU, if I knew about them, I did know about them, but it was like, ugh, they're so boring, mainstream. I care about what being able to speak my piece, the people who I like being able to speak their piece. And I really didn't give two shits about, whether the people I disagreed with would have the right to speak.
Yes.
And so I was one of those people who would stand outside of Up With People when they came, trying to shout them down. But over time, I came to appreciate that, and I would wonder, who would get excited about, defending the right to say something? I'll get excited about saying the right thing,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But over time, I came to appreciate how important it is to actually defend neutral principles. I should say that, you know, I grew up in a family that was persecuted during the McCarthy era. My dad lost his job, had to sort of give up on his dreams of a, you know, career as a lawyer. He was in law school, had to drop out, you know, and move us out of, you know, a place that we were really happy and loved, you know, into New Jersey.
Sorry, Jersey.
Donna Lieberman does not pull punches.
And there's a nice little side story. Apparently, he went to work as the personnel director at Maidenform, and you know, of course, that was fun. In college, we didn't wear bras, you know, and he dreamt he was what in the Maidenform. Anyway, but the day before he started his new job at Maidenform, it turns out the FBI visited the company and told the people who ran it that they should not hire, they should, you know, get rid of this communist who was supposed to start work the next day.
Oh, my God.
And, of course, what they didn't know is that the people who founded Maidenform were these old Jewish socialists, you know, immigrants, right? And they just, you know, I mean, told them to go fuck themselves and whatever, you know. So that's kind of a cute story. Anyway, so I mean, I've been an activist all my life, and you know, when Norman Siegel, my predecessor, you know, asked me to come here as his deputy, you know, 1989, you know, I gave up a teaching gig at City College that I kind of loved, I said, you're going to regret this. You know, I had summers off. I could take, you know, I could go in 2 days, 3 days. You know, I love teaching. I love my students, you know, and I said, and I'm only going to work until 5:30. I got to pick my kids up. And so, of course, I could count on the fingers of one hand, you know, the number of days that I got to pick my kids up on time.
Yeah.
But I really haven't looked back for a minute.
I'm so fascinated by it's something that I wasn't aware of until I started doing more work with you all. That what did you just call them? Neutral principles that I was surprised, and maybe you could share an example with us of the type of case that you would take on defending someone's right to free speech, for instance,
Sure.
where it was different than the kind of free speech that I would enjoy hearing in the world. It, you know, they held differing opinions, but what you were fighting for was that neutral principle.
Right. You know, one of the most important First Amendment cases, which Brandenburg versus Ohio, involves established the principle that you can't be arrested for inciting to riot unless there is a call for imminent lawless action at a time in a context where it's likely to happen. And so that came out of like some right-wing, you know, Klan-like rally, right? But that's the principle that was used in the Chicago 8 case where people were charged with inciting to riot, right?
Wow.
And like, you know, they weren't rioting, the police were rioting. But you know, you can't, you know, just because I get up on a podium and say, you know, we need a revolution. Oh, groovy, you know. But if it's not, you know, if it's not a context where we've got guns and you know, violent things, you know, making violent things happening, then, well, you know, it's not inciting to riot, and it's actually protected speech, you know. So. You know, we at the NYCLU once, maybe more than once, but I can remember once, you know, represented at the Republican National Convention in 2004, where we were representing all these groups that were demonstrating against the Republicans, you know, we also represented some Right to Life group that wanted to demonstrate at the convention.
Because the neutral principle that you're defending is that
Free
right
speech.
to free speech and peaceful protest and all of that, right? It is fascinating to think about, like, the idea that we can be on board with that principle and defend it no matter which side is arguing and what they're arguing for is such a lost, it's kind of a lost art that we're able to see both sides of it.
Yeah, and I can tell you, one area where it's like really a conundrum. I probably shouldn't even raise it because it really, sort of can make people mad. But
that's what this podcast is all about.
But in the context of, for example, sexual harassment, sexual assault, on campus, for example, some people think that we believe her, means that whenever a woman makes an accusation against a man, you have to believe the woman.
Right.
Well, we can't agree with that. It's not okay to persecute people. If you're going to accuse somebody, then you have to give them their day in court, and you have to do it by a process that is laid out in advance, that is the same for everybody, and that creates the greatest likelihood for a just result. So, that's not...
You can see how being somebody who is standing in defense of neutral principles could make you a very unpopular person, Donna Lieberman.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure people are like, why can't you just side with me?
Yes.
I'm on the right side.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about one of the accomplishments that you've had that stands out to you that you're like particularly proud of?
Do you believe it that it's hard to pick?
I do believe it.
So and I have to say that there have been, how lucky am I to have so many moments in my professional life where I feel that the work that we have done has changed history, changed people's lives for the better.
That's incredible.
And so, I mean, really, you mentioned the Edie Windsor case.
Yeah.
We were co-counsel on that. I love Edie Windsor.
For people that don't know, will you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, Edie Windsor challenged the Defense of Marriage Act, and we got it struck down in the Supreme Court. And wow.
Yeah.
And
wow.
But indulge me, because there are a couple of others that come to mind as well. This isn't something that happened in a moment, but happened over the course of time.
Yes.
I feel proud and very responsible for igniting, leading, and participating in the movement to end stop and frisk abuse in New York City. Mm-hmm. We're the ones who fought for the data. We're the ones who just exposed the racial disparities. We're the ones who exposed the fact that stop and frisk wasn't about guilty people. It was about innocent people, and it almost never ended with the recovery of a firearm, which is what it was supposed to be all about. And there's no one thing, there's no one time where we could take a victory lap. But I got to tell you, I have a picture up in my office of, the stop and frisk march down Fifth Avenue. I think it was 2012, where it was one of the most diverse and beautiful, huge marches, of people from all walks of life in New York City against stop and frisk. And, Mayor de Blasio, ran on a campaign to end stop and frisk, and whatever we may have to say about how he actually ended up, stop and frisk was at 700,000 in 2012 and is now 25,000. today.
And you helped make that happen.
When I hear that, I'm just like, that to me is, if you're listening to this and you're like, all of this is well and good, Donna Lieberman, why are you on the Sparkfile podcast, a creativity podcast? This is enormously creative to us, that you and your people here conceived of this, decided that you were going to set your sights on this, and then figured out how to address this, in a really...
It seems like you have to do a lot of creative problem solving, because you have to figure out how we're going to attack this problem. Like
even selecting which issue
problem
you're going to address.
Oh, totally.
And then what's the way in? And
how did you, within that, to use that as an example, how did you decide that was the thing that you wanted to focus on?
Well, 2020 hindsight, we didn't know what we were going to find, or actually where we were going to go along this campaign, or what we could accomplish. But inch by inch, we kept building on this progress, and, using the tool of the fight for transparency was huge. Using the tool of reporting, publishing a report with data is huge. But I got to tell you, one of the most powerful and poignant moments in my professional life was a meeting we had in about 2007, 2008 with a group of elected officials, all black, from Brooklyn, convened by Yvette Clarke, the Congresswoman. And it was the first time that we were presenting the data on stop and frisk.
Wow.
And so we told them how many there were, the racial disparities. And it turns out the racial disparities are basically the same for all sorts of different bad things that the police do. Arrests for various offenses, school arrests. Anyway, and I went there and presented this data, and every single black elected official around the table had a story.
Whoa.
Had a story about it happened to the nephew, themselves, their cousin, their uncle, their husband. And it was, I walked out of there like just totally blown away, because nobody knew how to deal with it. Nobody yet, including me, understood that the narrative that stop and frisk was about public safety, was about going after criminals. The police department can say, we go where the crime is, we go after criminals, we go to the hot spots, right? But nobody had yet internalized that when you stop and frisk, people, and 90% of them walk away without so much as a summons. This ain't about crime.
That's right.
This is about an occupying army. And it took a while for that reality to kind of sink in, and people were just flabbergasted, didn't know what to do. We didn't know what the next steps were, and we just had to kind of keep fighting.
You're taking the information as it comes and writing the story.
Absolutely. We were writing the script as we, and editing all the way along.
Yeah.
Wow. It was a Tony Kushner production.
It is epic.
Speaking of productions,
Yeah.
I know that you and Susan have worked together quite a bit on Broadway Stands Up for Freedom.
Yeah.
Can you share with the rest of us what that is and how it came to be?
Sure.
I want to know more.
Light up.
Yeah. Well, Susan knows how it came to be. That's why she expected me to light up. So Broadway Stands Up for Freedom is an annual concert that the NYCLU puts on, thanks to the generosity and talent of a whole bunch of wonderful, brilliant, beautiful Broadway stars who come and do something for the NYCLU. They just perform their guts out.
Yeah.
And it has evolved over the years, but it started as my daughter Liana's present to the NYCLU when she was graduating from high school. And the first one was in the back room at Danny's Skylight Cafe on 40-something Street, right? And there were at least 13 people hanging from the rafters, her soccer buddies and whatever, and it's, the rest is history. It's really, it's such a feel-good, wonderful event. It's an opportunity to get together, to feel good, to hear great music, to showcase talent, to showcase new music. And tell a little bit about our work. And I just love it.
I love it too. And one of the things that is, when I participated in this, it's so meaningful, is number one, it gives all of us, Broadway yahoos, a chance to, if you do have any sort of a activism spirit in your heart, it gives you a chance to funnel it into something and feel like you are using your special skills and talents to do something. But the other thing that I love about it is I know how hard you all work defending our freedoms and our civil liberties. And I thought, well, at least for one night, even though I know your staff works very hard even to put it up, at least for one night, you get to sit your asses down and get a little refreshment, to get a little gratitude and a little bit of hopefully some inspiration to stand back up and keep going.
Yeah, no, it's really invigorating and inspiring. This year I was it just felt like the perfect moment that we honored Celia Keenan Bolger.
Yes.
Celia is the gem of all gems, every which way. And it with this moment in her career with Mockingbird, and Celia is an activist, nobody else, and deeply committed to our work and to social justice stuff. It felt so right, to honor her, and that was kind of amazing.
And that speech she gave was, it's such. If you go online, in fact, we'll put the link up. Go watch the speech she gave. Is so good. Are there any other favorite moments? And you've seen so many of these at this point.
Yeah.
How many of these have there been?
17.
17.
Wow. Does your daughter still come to all of them?
She performs.
Beautifully. Are there any special standout memories that you have?
Of course, that no matter how fabulous anybody or everybody is, it's always a special moment for me to watch Liana on stage. And, that's, it's always fabulous for me. I'm still a stage mom. I remember right before the 2016 election, and we invited people to write their own
protest songs.
Yeah. And I remember Brandon Aranowitz doing. I can't even remember.
It was fantastic.
Right?
It was fantastic. That was an amazing night of theater. Shayna Taub wrote
Huddled Masses.
Also amazing. And that year, David Cale performed a song that Stu wrote that I became obsessed with. And the theme of it is essentially the clown has the nuclear codes. And it's one of the most powerful. It was like seeing David Bowie perform. It was unbelievable.
I can't believe that I was thinking about what are my favorite moments from B-Stuff, and you just named three of them. All three.
That was one spectacular
Another one, just
night.
while we're throwing them out, there's a all female dance troupe called the Lady Dragons from Brooklyn Tech, and they do that hard stomping.
Yeah.
And that
They were amazing.
I'm telling you, this Broadway Stands Up for Freedom, when it comes around, get yourself a ticket.
I was going to say, is this something we can all buy tickets to? We
yes.
can all attend.
Yes, not only that, but we know the date for 2020.
Oh.
Scoop.
Yeah.
When is it?
Scoop, October 26th, 2020. And that's like just a week before the most important election in our lives. And the theme of the concert is going to be voting. You gotta vote.
You gotta vote.
What a spark.
Wow. That energy in the room is going to be crazy.
And that's a great example of, you know, whether you're a performer or a lawyer or whatever you do, if you're passionate about these issues and you need something to pour that energy into, something like this is such a gift.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Or just buy a ticket, come support it.
Yeah.
And so we're always seeking to spark ourselves, obviously, but also our listeners. So if there's activist artists listening to the podcast right now, based on your experience, are there ways that they can get involved, that they can use their special skills to help on this front?
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that anybody can do really, really easily, you know, aside from, you know, joining our email list and,
of course,
and following us on this and that. But, you know, artists who have celebrity, you know, who have a lot of followers, you know, when they push out messages from the ACLU and the NYCLU and others, you know, about the issues of the day, it's really important. It's really helpful. And it helps to build the movement. You know, the biggest challenge for us, I think, is building a big, broad movement that doesn't have to be homogeneous and agree on everything and knows how to respect each other, cherish differences, as well as, you know, build on common ground. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
No, this is amazing because it sounds like you're talking about all of us have the ability to use our voice to amplify these messages. We're also living in a time when it feels scary to take a stand on things. And I just think that's like one of many things that you must be contending with. The fact that even on some of these basic rights, if someone does lend their voice to it, we have, we just have the online version of a pylon, you know, of people basically saying the opposite. So I know that some people have a hesitancy to use their voice for that because of that fear.
And I think that, so, you know, using your voice and social media is, you know, I mean, it's a pain in the ass. It is like so dangerous.
Said it.
But it's also, you know, got so much potential and we can't ignore it.
That's right.
So people have the capability of really, you know, I mean, use that gift, you know, use your brilliance, you know, and get it out there. You know, of course, for our concert, you know, we're always, you know, eager to have, you know, people, you know, join us for that, both as, you know, and advertising and stuff. Yeah. But also, you know, for other organizations, you know, I mean, we're not the only game in town. Planned Parenthood, we have to protect the hell out of Planned Parenthood. You know, we have to protect the hell out of the New York Immigration Coalition. You know, we have to protect Make the Road. We have to really, you know, be together and use our activism. You know, I think that and of course, you know, my dream, of course, is like, you know, to have the ACLU, you know, singer-songwriter project, you know, or singer-songwriter festival.
That's
you know,
incredible.
You know,
that's an incredible idea.
You know, I feel so passionate about the importance of art in a social movement. You can't have a movement that doesn't speak to the soul. And so it's about art, it's about music, it's about poetry, and so I would love to Anyway, anybody?
Well, you just said you can't have a movement without something that speaks to your soul.
Yeah.
And that's the role that artists can play in it. I just think that's an incredible takeaway.
I love that. I mean, the more we do this and the more I live life, there's that old saw that we've just heard all our lives about. It's all about the story. It's all about storytelling. Yeah. And when I remember first hearing that probably in college, being like, yeah. And as I age, I'm like, it really is. So something that maybe people can't even, they can't wrap their minds around the complexity of the issue, or it seems dry, or it seems at a remove from them. That storytelling, whether it's through graphic design, Bonnie Siegler, whether it's through, like, you were saying, poetry, protest songs. There's so many ways that it can live, but I think you're right. It's not the only conduit, but art and creativity is a powerful conduit, a visceral conduit.
Absolutely. And historically, artists have been on the cutting edge of civil liberties. Right. We represented Joe Pack back in the day.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Wow. People, artists who speak their mind. We challenged the censorship of
Children's Hour.
Children's Hour. Yeah. And
so Joe Papp was famously the founder of the Public Theater in New York.
Yeah, he was accused of being a communist. And so
unbelievable.
And artists are often, testing the limits of free speech.
Yeah.
Yes. Saying fuck on the air,
that's right.
Is like,
I know. And we get to stand on their fucking shoulders. It's amazing.
I said fuck in a press conference today.
How'd that go over?
The crowd loved it.
You are walking the walk, talking the talk.
This is why I thought it would be so interesting to talk to you, because I believe that your work is deeply creative, and I'm not just referring to Broadway Stands Up for Freedom concert.
Yeah.
I feel like what we were just saying, certainly. Are there other ways that you feel like creativity plays a role in your day-to-day work?
Yeah. So this may not be what you're looking for, but another project that we undertook around policing and stop and frisk, was the Museum of Broken Windows.
Say more. Oh my God, my mind is blown. Sorry, say more.
So we spent about 2 years trying to figure out how we could get the message about the harms of broken windows policing. And of course, stop and frisk is, a big, pillar of that.
Yeah.
And we worked with the SOSE agency and put together a pop-up museum, which documented broken windows policing, with a piece on Abner Louima. There's the toe tag piece that has a bunch of toe tags, the tags that they put on dead corpses.
God.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And there were like thousands of them hanging from the ceiling, one for each person who was murdered by the cops during one given year.
Oh God!
There's no record of how many people get killed by the police, and so literally somebody went around to research that, and this was the product. There was so much. We have portraits of moms and other family members of people who were killed by the police, and this is like an interesting story because Gwen Carr. Sean Bell's mom, Valerie, Irma Baez, and you can see how Marley Graham's mom, Connie Malcolm, you can see, these are people who are in an affinity group that nobody wants to be part of.
Oh, right. That's the truth.
And the portraits of them, which were done kind of after they came together and solidified as a group, show both sadness and determination. And it's just so powerful because I know, like, personally, so many of the people whose portraits were in the exhibit, and I could watch the body language, the way, for some of them, the way they carried themselves, changing over time as they became a cohesive unit and fought back for structural changes that would either vindicate their kids or reduce the likelihood that others would get killed by the police and nobody be held accountable. It was just like so powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. So we do put our money where our mouth is.
This is why I love you.
Yeah.
I think you are. I think, and I've just over the years on many a conference call and in many a meeting, I see how you're always striving to, and it may be because your daughter is an artist. It may, I'm not sure what the origin is there, but I always see you always make that connection about how can we get children involved? How can we get children's writing involved? Having a contest, a poetry contest, so that those students who write those beautiful pieces, they sometimes come and read them at the I mean, it is I feel
incredible.
Like you are always, in addition to your very high-powered job and very demanding job, there's always this sort of creative wheel turning with you.
Thank you.
It's true.
It's true.
I don't make the news. I just report
just
it.
Describe some really powerful art installations.
Yeah.
And the way you describe the artist's role in the bigger picture is really inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you've been the executive director of the NYCLU for almost 20 years. For all of our sakes, I hope it's 20 years more. I don't know how you feel about it.
I don't know how my kids feel about that. Yeah.
Is there a thing that you need to do before you're done?
Well, we have a little, line here that, the work of defending civil liberties is never done. You have to fight again and again and again. And so, and adding to that, and I think that's true, look, we thought that, my generation thought that we, won all sorts of civil rights victories and peace in our lives and all that crap,
relax, kick back for a little bit.
Yeah. Look at us now. Look at the world that we're handing down to the next generation. It's disgusting. But also I know, there's lots that I want to do. And perhaps first and foremost, the notion of sort of building the basis for a huge, strong, broad movement, that is committed to basic human rights values would be fabulous. I think you never get that done. It's something, getting to that in any moment in time would be wonderful. But it's not something you can just sit back and, enjoy.
Right.
Yeah.
But and I keep thinking, I'm passionate about education. I think it's at the core of any democratic society. And, the fact that we have, one of the most segregated school systems in the nation here in New York is an embarrassment. It's what my grandmother would call a shanda. And it's something that we have yet to figure out how to grapple with. But I'm also like, I know that whatever accomplishments I can be proud of are accomplishments that are made possible by not just a huge team here at the NYCLU, but a huge team of allies, you know, around the state and around the country. None of us is like, you know, that important, or, you know, none of us can take credit for anything by ourselves, and all of us can take credit for all of it. So, you know, I mean, I hope I've done a good job. I think I've accomplished some important things, but, you know, things will go on without me. And I just want to set us up to make sure that the NYCLU is as strong and strategic as it can be, and set up to do that moving forward. And that means, you know, centering issues of racism, which is like the legacy that we all have to grapple with, but doing so in a way that builds bridges and builds empathy, rather than division. So we have to build, you know, across race, across gender, across ethnicity and religion, and of course, citizen, non-citizen, and you know, we have to recognize that while how we deal with individuals, how we behave in our day-to-day life is important. You know, we are all the products of a society and a set of laws, some of which are fabulous, you know, some of which set forth fabulous principles, and some of which really, really suck and perpetuate racism and gender inequality and homophobia. And so we can't be blaming each other so much. We have to be focusing on, you know, keep our eyes on the prize, as they say.
You know, we've said this about other people that we've talked about on this podcast before, and I think this is true of Donna as well. You're a big wave rider. You're not playing small. When I'm like, what do you need to do before you get it done? You're like, a major political movement. I need to fix New York education, and I need to create a strong foundation for when I pass the baton. Check. Big wave rider. While I'm thinking about it, if people do want to, if people hear this and they get excited and they do want to volunteer for work with the NYCLU or the ACLU, where do we send them?
Well, so our website at nyclu.org has a way to join, donate, and volunteer.
Those are good things.
So you know, pick your own adventure. You know, and if there's, you know, I don't guarantee that anybody can get through to me if they email me at dlieberman@nyclu.org, but you can try. I wish I could say you could get through to me.
No, that you're a busy person.
I mean, just that offer. That's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, think, you know, we've grown enormously thanks to the Trump bump, but. And I'm glad people appreciate us. But one of the things that I've lost as a result of having grown so much is my ability to engage as much as I would like, you know, with on a whole lot of levels. So, but try me, you know, you never know.
I love it.
You work so hard, and it seems like your whole team works so hard, tirelessly, endlessly. What's it all for?
Well, you know, first of all, I can't imagine not devoting a good chunk of my life to improving our lot, you know, as a people, as a country, and as a world, you know, and if there's one regret I have about what I do, by the way, it's that I'm not working that much on climate change, and like, what's it all about if we don't have a planet?
Right.
So I'm grateful to others who are doing that work. You know, to me, I think, you know, it's about creating a society that is fairer, more just, and a place where, you know, everybody can feel, can thrive, can strive, and have opportunities. You know, I got grandchildren.
That's right.
That's a good what's it all
That's a
for.
really good answer.
Finally, what or who is sparking you these days, Donna Lieberman?
Oh, there's all these negative people who are sparking me.
But that's what we call those dark sparks.
Yeah.
Dark sparks. Well, the dark sparks are obvious. Dark orange sparks, and everybody in his, cult, I mean, I can't imagine the politicians in Washington who have, filled the swamp, with Republican, toadyism, racism, elitism, capitalism. I mean, but the bright sparks, are there's so many. There's I still live on the joy and courage of Edie Windsor.
Yes.
I relish the legacy of the John Lewises and of the world. Brian Stevenson is like an amazing role model of courage and smarts. There's so many, I wish I had one in the presidential field. Anyway,
it's good though that you have these spark sources to sort of keep you going. To keep you buoyed and keep you with your eyes on the prize.
Yeah, it's there are lots of people who've done amazing work and under much harsher conditions than ours. Nelson Mandela spent decades in solitary confinement, and victory was for the ANC huge and full of problems and full of new challenges. So I guess, the wisdom of old age is that really the battle never stays won. Maybe you have to be content with small victories. But man, do we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
We recently talked to a graphic designer named Bonnie Siegler, and she did a book called Signs of Resistance. And it was a historical. I don't know if you've seen it.
Have you seen this book?
No, I haven't.
We should send you a copy of this book
because
it's beautiful.
It's historically. It's a visual timeline of protest and resistance in America, and her takeaway from all of that research was basically a very comforting thought that we have been through very hard times before and we got through them. And she's also fired up and angry about, the state of the world at the moment, but she does take some comfort in knowing that as a world, we've been in pretty rough spots previously and we made it through.
Yeah, it feels, things do feel so dire, because the consequences are the toll in lives, just upended, here and around the world, based on the petty, greed and corruption of the guy that we all let get elected, to the White House. And, one of the lessons, I think that I hope our country has learned, all those people who stayed home, in 2016 because, one politician, Hillary, Trump, same thing. What a crock of shit that is,
Yeah.
And, we have to sort of, it's important to figure out what your values are and to fight for them.
Yeah.
But it's also important to recognize where the context in which you're living. And anybody who claims to care a whit about equality, of racism, freedoms, fucking democracy,
women's rights, reproductive rights,
everything, is anybody who cares about the values we hold dear, better fucking vote, in the coming election, and do everything that they possibly can, to make sure that this election is not rigged, as somebody once said, and that we don't have to spend another 4 years, just pushing back against the juggernaut, because the harm to our democracy that has already been done is going to take decades to undo. And so it's a tough time. It's a what the existential threat to democracy is like real.
This is
very real.
When I hear this, and listeners, when you hear this, if it does like spark a fire in you, if you feel similarly, take action. We were talking about that recently, like pick a thing that, really speaks to you, that you do feel passionate about, and take action. And if you have a hard time picking one, then do some volunteer work for a place, or make a donation to a place like the NYCLU, because that way you can support efforts across the board.
Yeah. And, there's so much to do. I mean, we have to in New York, we have a special obligation. We may be a blue state, and and we know how New York will vote in the presidential election. We don't know how New York will vote in the state elections, which are really, really important, or in the congressional elections. But we have to make sure that New York is set up to be as much of a safe haven as possible, whether Trump gets reelected, I can't believe I said that, or not. And we have to give the people that we put in office the courage, because they're not going to find it anyplace else, to do the right thing. That's how we got the Reproductive Health Act. That's how we got voting reform. That's how we got the Green Light Bill that provides for driver's license for undocumented New Yorkers. I mean, it's so important for us to be active. And at the NYCLU, we've got a legislative agenda that's 10 miles long. We may have accomplished a lot last year. We still have a lot to do. And so you can become an e-activist for us. If you're in, outside of New York City, we have chapters outside of New York City, several places, and, the other thing is, some people live comfortably and some people don't, and people don't necessarily put their money where their mouth is. It may not be that you think you should support the ACLU. That's cool. But don't think that it's okay for you to amass your, bank accounts or investment portfolio and not support organizations that are fighting for social change. Do good organizations, service organizations, but social change is where we're going to make sure that people are taken care of in our country, that people have rights in this country, and that we're able to push back.
I love it.
I do too.
And I love you, Donna.
I love you.
You're so sparkish to us. You inspire us so much.
And we're very grateful. I mean, we said it at the top. We'll just bookend this episode with our gratitude for the work that you do day in and day out. It's more than just writing a check, although writing a check is great. It's more than a bit of volunteer work. It is your life's work, and all of our lives are better for it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, what she said.
Thank you, guys. I love you.
Hi, listeners. This is a postscript with Donna Lieberman. In the time since we last spoke to Donna, the world has not only been dealing with the stresses of a global pandemic, but even more recently, a man named George Floyd was murdered by a police officer during a routine arrest in Minneapolis. This is only one of a long line of brutalities against people of color, and specifically people who are Black. What has followed is many nights of peaceful protest, and in some locations, the protests have escalated to violence. As someone who fights fearlessly and tirelessly for the powers of good, we wanted to get Donna's perspective on the events.
Donna, thank you so much for taking the time to join us for an update. We've never done anything like this before, but with all that's happening, we really wanted to get your perspective on everything that's happening. So, from where you're sitting in your position at the NYCLU, can you help us unpack all of this? How's that for a giant question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I could, maybe I would deserve some sort of a prize because I don't know anybody who thinks that they can unpack what's going on now.
Yeah, it's so big.
I remember like the week that we evacuated our office. From Monday to Friday, our conversations went something like, well, okay, we should allow people to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we should encourage people who know somebody who knew somebody to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should, maybe they should work from home. You must work from home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And every day it felt eminently reasonable, what we were doing. And it was valid, for like a minute and a half. And, as we have almost miraculously in New York, at least, adjusted to this new, bizarro, painful, uncertain, scary normal, the police, go out and kill Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And what the police don't do, white supremacists do.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, it's hard to fathom, somebody I was talking to today referred to our lives as like we're dealing with two dystopias,
Yes.
And there's the pandemic, and then there's the racism pandemic, which is far more intractable. But
it has been around a lot longer than this particular pandemic.
Yeah, there's no vaccine to look for against racism.
That's right.
So, what we've tried to do, in this, in dealing with COVID, I mean, literally everything that was like important and difficult a week ago is like, so, gone today. So a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we were dealing with the issue of whether in this public health crisis, there really was a ban on protest activity that was small and respected social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking to some groups that were protesting Samaritan's Purse in Central Park, the religious nuts whose offer of help during the height of the crisis in New York City was accepted. They ended up sort of deciding to not meet us. But then somebody who doesn't share a lot of our values, to put it mildly, who had participated in the Open It Up, MAGA rally in Albany, wanted to protest in New York. And what was going on then? What was going on then was that she couldn't get a permit to protest in New York City. Meanwhile, the governor had said that, religious services can happen if they are socially distant and less than 10 people. And Memorial Day celebrations could go on if they are socially distant and less than 10 people. But you can't have a protest rally that's socially distant and less than 10 people. And so, like, there's a basic principle in First Amendment law that you can't, discriminate against the message. you can't prefer one kind of speech to another. You certainly can't prefer religion to non-religion. And so we filed a lawsuit, and like it was like lightning, I mean, we filed, and like before the afternoon of that day, the governor's office changed the rules, and they said, yeah, you can have a protest. Wow. And so like that was a victory. Protest, less than 10 people, socially distant, and boom, fast forward to, less than a week later, and there are thousands of people in the street.
Oh my God.
It's been a very strange ride, and that's just like one little aspect of what we're doing. That's really a very small piece of what we're doing. So much of the work that we've been doing has been focusing on, getting people out of jail, out of prisons, out of immigration detention. Each of those places is a petri dish. It's, you send somebody to one of those places and it could very well be a death sentence. It has been for too many people. And like, what kind, the extreme consequences of this, of decades of mass incarceration and Trump's, hateful policies on immigration are like, they're there for everybody to see. So we've been working hard on that stuff, and with mixed success, honestly.
For people who just don't know exactly, what do you do? How do you fight and try to make a difference in a time like this?
The NYCLU and the ACLU, has a bunch of different tools in our little toolbox. We file lawsuits, we do lobbying, we do advocacy and organizing, and this has required all of it. So we filed a lawsuit on behalf of parolees, people who have been released on parole, who were arrested for alleged violations of parole, challenging this ridiculous, rule that's in place that if you're arrested for a violation of parole, you're automatically incarcerated until you have a hearing. And now, given the COVID pandemic, they're actually, they may have resumed them, but there haven't been any hearings on parole. So not only are you automatically incarcerated for at least like 60 days, under normal circumstances.
Oh my God.
But now you're incarcerated, and it's going to be 90, 120 days if you make it out alive. And
oh my God.
So that's a lawsuit that actually hasn't been successful, but we're pressing legislation to change the law so that people who are arrested on parole are not automatically incarcerated like that. And actually, we're pressing for a massive overhaul of the parole system. Instead of doing like the smart thing, with the parole system, which is helping people reintegrate into society. The whole approach of the parole system is well, you're really still in jail. We have control over you, but for, and can do anything we want with you. We can raid your house at any time. We can check in to make sure you're in bed. We can screw around with you if you don't go to a job when you're supposed to, or to a curfew when you, or to a drug treatment program. So what if you're in the hospital and don't show up in the drug program? I don't care. Bring you in and we'll ask. You'll answer the questions later. That's the kind of approach that the parole system takes. And, and who are they taking it towards? I mean, whoa, I mean, the people who are, tormented by this, draconian system are almost exclusively, Black and Latinx people. And so this is, and at the same time, we're dealing with, a pandemic that is, having a massively disparate impact on Black and Latinx people. We're dealing with we're creating petri dishes and death traps of prisons which are massively Black and Latinx, and then the cops are out there, have killed people for all the world to see who are Black and it's like enough already, enough. And that's what we're seeing going on in the streets.
For those of us who have that impulse to get involved, to support the powers of good in the most useful way possible, point us in the right direction. How can we and/or our listeners be of support, and what action can people take in a time like this?
So the first thing I want to say is the only legitimate kind of protest right now is nonviolent protest. If people want to break the law and make a point, engage in civil disobedience, fine. But engaging in random acts of violence does nobody any good. It does not promote the cause of justice. It doesn't promote the well-being of anybody in society. Historically, we have seen, police agents and people with other agendas, being responsible for inciting violence, and it's going to hurt us in the end. So I think that peaceful protest, civil disobedience is one thing. Violence is something else, and we have to hold. Now is the time when we see police who have for years not been held accountable to anybody. In New York State, there's a law known as 50A, which shields police disciplinary records from public scrutiny. Enough already. They have to repeal it. The legislature has been too scared of its shadow, too scared of the police unions, to repeal that law. Our mayor, did a terrible thing in turning it into, a much worse law than it started out. And we're pressing hard in Albany to repeal 50A. And so you should tell everybody, who's in an elected position at the state level to repeal 50A. And people should do it now because, one of the things that has happened as a result of, what's going on nationwide is that politicians are realizing that they haven't done enough. You can't undo the structure of racism if you don't have courage. And if you don't dismantle, systems that shield white supremacy and shield from scrutiny and accountability racist law enforcement. And if ever we're going to restore trust between law enforcement and the people, we have to make the bad cops accountable. So that's one thing. And there's information on our website, NYCLU.org, about, how to take action. There's more information about the issues. And that's just one thing. We have a host of issues that we're working on. Let's talk about education. Our finances, as a state, as a nation, are disastrous. So the stock market's doing fine, but the rest of the people are not doing so well.
That's right.
And there's talk of cutbacks. Remember when New York City elected a progressive mayor? Do you know that progressive mayor wants to cut the crap out of education, but not nothing from the police department? Nothing from the police department. Police department budgets are so bloated. It's time for somebody to have the courage to redirect, the money that's been given to the police department and the police lobby into doing some social good. Of course, police are important, but this is nuts. So it's sort of like a people's budget. Or a humane budget, a humanitarian budget. And remember, who's in our public schools? It's an outsized representation of the Black and Latinx community in New York and across the country, because Black people sometimes go to private schools, sure, but overwhelmingly, rely on the public schools. And, and if we don't fund adequately the public schools, we lose a generation.
Well, you also think about like the school to prison pipeline. So when you remove support for those kids, aren't we going to just see more need for prisons and a police state? So it's like you're already making that decision by putting the budget into the police and not into the students.
Right. I mean, I've been talking for years about the peace dividend. I want to see a police dividend in the New York City schools, which have the largest school safety division in the country, and which standing alone, if it were its own police department, now it's a subdivision of the NYPD, would be like the fifth largest police department in the country, just for the New York City public schools.
Wow.
And crime in the schools is at the lowest it's been in crime, in years, and as is crime in the city. And why do you need so many cops in schools? Let's spend that money to like restore things like, I don't know, should it be art, music, gym,
school
sports,
supplies?
Yes.
There's so
Lunches.
much. And also, with the pandemic and and the shift to remote learning,
Yes.
who do you
yes,
think
Donna.
are, where do you think the families are who are sharing, 3 kids on one laptop or
Right.
one iPad? So there's a lot of equity issues here, but
Yeah.
but our mantra in the New York City budget hearings has been, kids, not cops. Don't cut education, cut your bloated bureaucracy, cut your cops, and cut this stupid high stakes testing business. And let's spend money. Let's invest in the classroom. Let's invest, on the playing field, so kids can build community, can learn, and so that we don't lose a generation.
What have we not asked you about that you wish people understood or people knew?
God, I'm not used to that question. I don't know. I mean, I think that this is, a bizarre and challenging and precarious moment in history. I mean, I feel like we're, really at the edge of a precipice. I think there are opportunities created by this horrific situation we find ourselves in. There's an opportunity to go in a new and better direction, and there is an opportunity to just fall off the fascist cliff. And I think that it behooves us all to think about how each of us builds the community that we're also that we're all missing so much because of the social isolation, and how at least people who have some common ground can appreciate that, there are a lot of people of goodwill who are at various times marginalized and made vulnerable by society, by social biases, by racism, of course, but also by gender and gender identity, and while it's really hard not to be angry, and anger is entirely appropriate when this shit goes on. When you watch, George Floyd lying there. But thinking about how we build, relationships and some glue so that we can move forward as a society. That's the challenge. Of course, we've got to get that maniac, away. need a new government, but, a new face, a different party is only going to be as the policies. It's only going to be as good as the policies and the courage that it has to really take on some tough issues.
When you speak, Donna, I just keep thinking the takeaway is we have to courageously make our voices heard. And that's going to be something different for each person. If you're somebody who can be out in crowds, that may be being in person protesting. If you're somebody who's a great writer, it may mean writing about it. Everybody who is of legal age should vote. Like, this is the time. With this pandemic, so much has broken down, and we're going to be entering into a new normal. And if we make our voices heard, could have some say in what this new world is. But people have to courageously stand up and make their voices heard.
Absolutely. Everybody should be voting. Everybody should be voting. The primaries are one thing, but the general election, if you don't vote, you should be ashamed of yourself, and your friends should shame you, even if it's a place that doesn't matter. Everybody needs to vote. But also, everybody needs to fill out the census. The census is the key to representation in Congress, and it's the key to access to the allocation of federal funds, whether it's for highways or schools or lunch or Medicaid. Yep. And if people don't do that, we are screwed. So democracy kind of, may feel a little like something that, we got it, I don't think that we can take it for granted at all.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that
right.
people really need to show up. And that's a little easy way. Go online, census.gov, fill it out. It takes 4.5 minutes. Okay, 5 if you're a Luddite, But everybody's got to do it.
So step 1, complete the census. Step 2, vote. Step 3, and this is bonus points. You can go to the NYCLU website. You can learn all about, or on their social media. I think you all do a great job at keeping up with your Twitter, etc. And as we've said before, pick a thing and do it. Just pick a thing and do it.
Yep.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us again, Donna.
Thank you so much.
Your time is so precious always, but especially right now. And we're going to let you get back to fighting the good fight. For our listeners, we hope to God this put another bunch of sparks in your file. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social media at The Spark File. Be sure to subscribe, rate, 5-star review this podcast. If you like this podcast, share it with people you love. If you didn't like it, Donna, what do you say to your critics?
You're entitled to your opinion. Just don't tell anyone.
Very classy. Very classy.
If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
Here's my poem to close out this episode. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter, Black lives matter, Black lives matter, Black lives matter. That's it.
You got to take it
right on.
and make it.
Thank you, Donna.
Donna, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.